Good morning, everybody. Can you hear and see me?
Yes.
Good morning. Yes.
Perfect. Right. So I know Paul is running a little bit late, but hopefully he'll be joining us in the next couple of minutes. I want to thank all of our delegates joining Equality Leaders at our summit today. And it's my distinct honor to be in conversation with Lisa, Devi, Brandon, and hopefully Paul in a few moments too. Um, and we're going to be looking at how we build a people first economy by re-humanizing our workspaces. So we'll be discussing topics of well-being, inclusion and belonging, emotional intelligence, and more, exploring how businesses really need to be putting their people first. But before we dive in, I think it's important for us to share with everybody who we are, how we self identify, so that they're aware of our positionality and how our identities inform our conversation this morning. So I'll kick us off and I will introduce myself. My name is Dylan. My pronouns are he, him, she, her. I self identify as a white, gender fluid gay man who is an immigrant, but also privileged to have been university educated and have English as my native language. Devi, would you like to introduce yourself to our
Hi.
delegates?
Thanks, Dylan. Hi, everybody. Lovely to be here today. My name is Debbie Verdi. My pronouns are she, her. I work for Centrica. I'm the group head of diversity and inclusion. I identify myself as a straight female. I'm Asian British, an immigrant originally from Hong Kong, speaks four languages, a mother, a sister, a daughter. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. How about yourself, Brandon?
Hi everyone. My name is Brandon. My pronouns are he, him. I am. I've come here as part of an alumni group from this Royal Springboard Foundation. Essentially, I got very lucky and was placed in an independent boarding school coming from Tottenham, and so I've been afforded many opportunities since then. This this platform being one of them, and it's just really good to be here.
Great. Thank you so much, Brandon. Hello, Paul. I'm so happy that you're here. I thought we had lost you. How are you?
I'm good. We just had a little bit of last minute technical difficulties to add to the pressure. So hi everybody. My name is Paul Gilliam. I'm the VP HR for Claire's across Europe. We are a retailer for super inclusive retailer for kids and adults. We have about 900 stores in Europe and about 6,000 staff.
Thank you so much, Paul. And how about yourself, Lisa?
Morning all. Morning, Dylan. My name's Lisa Wainwright. My pronouns are her and she. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at the Sport and Recreation Alliance, an independent membership organisation of around 300 different sport and recreation activities, which I won't play a game and get you to guess all of them. I speak two languages, English and Yorkshire. I'm a lesbian and I have two daughters through IVF who spend a lot of time in Claire's accessories.
Perfect. I love that. Thank you so much, everybody. So, if you're ready, shall we dive straight into the first question? And I won't lie, I am going for the jugular here. So, of course, it goes without saying the pandemic really has put people back on the agenda, right? With many leaders, teams seeking new ways just to connect on a human level with one another. So, the question I have for you is, what does a people first approach look like to you and your organization? Or at the very least, what should it look like? Could I come to you first, Lisa?
Sure, Dylan. I think for me, and I'm more of a practitioner than an academic, but sport and recreation is a people business. It's where we might first take that swim, go and watch our kids play football, or be inspired by the Winter Olympics and things about to start in the Commonwealth Games. So we are about people. But I think what's absolutely key is the culture of an organisation, and this shouldn't have been dependent on a COVID or not. We should be constantly believing in the people within our organisation, and some of the things that we as a collective have done at the Alliance is, I was pretty clear when I started 3 years ago. People kept talking to me about this work-life balance, and I said, look, can we just stop? The most important thing is your life, actually. So can we reverse that? And if you say it the other way, I'll sack you. No, I didn't say that. I said, look, that's the culture I want. Your life is more important, because if you're happy in your life, you'll be happy at work, and likewise. And the other thing I brought in, they're quite simple. Instead of talking about the staff, it's a team. But that team is made up of individuals, just like a netball court. We're all individual playing our specific role in the organisation. But it doesn't mean we're just staff, we're individuals. So we brought in a culture, a team culture, not just a staff. And one of the things we brought in terms of humanising the hybrid, if you like, was empowering that team to say, what do you want to do as individuals? What would you like the organisation to be? And our team developed the values for the organisation. The team developed the strategy. Believe it or not, as a chief exec, I wasn't involved in that strategy until sign off. And I can see some of you freezing at this point. But they came up with some great things like one team motivation. How many of you develop the strategy and values hand in hand with the board? And we have one team motivation. So it's not, oh, the board have set this policy and this strategy, and it's the board. Actually, we're just all individuals as part of that one team trying to deliver the best for our sector. And one thing, that real small thing, but meant quite a lot, they asked if we could have something called Moments That Matter Days. Everybody has different reasons that matter to them, whether it be graduation, whether it be just seeing a friend during lockdown to go for a walk around that lake because she was desperate just to get out. And we introduced Moment That Matter Days. So they can take 2 days off without any reason, just because it's a moment that matters to them, as well as their volunteering leave. So there's some of the things that we've done, as well as team surveys, as you would expect. And we have weekly huddles where all staff attend. So we have a touch base with everyone. But for me, I think putting people back on the agenda, people are the agenda, and culture is critical. And culture, as you will know, will always eat strategy for breakfast. So that's what we've been doing at the Sport and Recreation Alliance.
Thank you so much for sharing, Lisa. And I really, I love that point that you make, where so often strategy is very much a top-down approach, and people, leaders, forget that actually this should be a participatory, inclusive process, right? Every organization is a living organism made up of human beings, of people, right? And to get that input, I think that's really crucial. So thank you so much for highlighting that. Devi, if I could come to you with the same question.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to hear, your views, Lisa, on that space, and that's that line, culture eats strategy. I mean, I love it, right? Because I think it rings true so much. But I think from my lens, and particularly with the organization size that I'm in, right? So we're sort of talking a business that is across multiple markets here, a huge workforce in the UK, right? Which our biggest workforce is British Gas. So, we have a population here of just over 19,000, right, in the UK. And I think one thing that the pandemic really did, and it goes, exactly what you said, but it put employee well-being, right? It took that to put employee well-being right at the front and center, actually, of our corporate agenda, right? But it's scary to think that it took something like that to really bring it to the perspective of the board and the C-suite, right? Because before, it was there, but it was just as an add-on, right? It was very much part of an HR well-being program and on the sideline. What's really happened for us in the space of, now the 24 months, I mean, goodness, I mean, it's gone so fast. But, if I look at where we were and where we are today, and I think of sort of the hybrid, work model that we actually have in our organization. So whilst we have engineers out, who are also going into our customer houses, right? So their safety is important. Our customer safety is important at the same time. We also have a very large workforce of our call center staff, right? And what was really interesting when we talk about taking a human first approach, we did a check-in with our colleagues, and I've got to say, having sort of been in the company and not for that long, but the fact that we had a CEO who was very much, I want to hear what our colleagues have to say, right? How do they want to go back to work after what has just happened? What has completely changed? You know what? Everybody's lives in some way or another, and it's touched everybody. So the outcome of that is actually, as a business, we launched a flexible first approach. Now you might say to me, well, Debbie, what on earth does that mean? So flexible first, basically for our organization, it gives colleagues an opportunity really to combine the flexibility of working from home and to balance effectively their personal commitments, like a school run, right? And if you wanted to go in the office to connect and collaborate, you can do that. But as a working parent, and so much, our demographic really comes out, and this is where the data really helps us. Our demographic of our working parents have sort of said it's really improved their well-being, right? And it's really sort of also supported them to develop opportunities, within the workplace that actually they otherwise wouldn't have been possible to do. So that's just a lens, particularly from our second largest workforce, which is from our customer center teams, right, who can now do their roles at home. They don't have to be, in a site per se to be operating. And that human center approach for me is just so valuable, but it starts from the top. So we have a CEO who absolutely, and I feel incredibly privileged to be working for this individual who really is just incredibly passionate about making sure that actually the inclusion agenda, the diversity agenda, is part and parcel of the everyday. And that's not easy to find. So I feel that I personally am in a very privileged position. And how do I harness that with him and the rest of the C-suite to make sure that actually we can make progress along the way?
Thank you so much, Debbie. And speaking to that piece on flexibility, we're going to explore that a little bit more throughout the day, because you're absolutely right. That is key. And again, this question of checking in with people, having those conversations. Sometimes I think, it's far easier to get wrapped up into the swell of, building strategy and meetings and just the everyday of going about doing our working lives, that we actually forget to say, well, hold on, before we come up with a grand plan, let's check in with people. Let's see how they're feeling. Let's see what challenges or barriers they're facing, right? Thank you so much. Paul, if I could come to you and ask you the same question. I mean, what does a people first approach look like to you and Claire's?
Yeah, I think we've already discussed a lot of great points. For me, some key things, I think, trust, individuals, and culture, as Lisa talked about. We work in a brand which is all about fun, self-expression, creativity, joy. And that means different things to different people. And we celebrate that in our customers, and we should celebrate that in our employees. So I think for us, one of the real learnings that we've had over the last 18 months has been, how can we really trust and empower people more, and almost encourage our managers at all levels to kind of color outside the lines a little bit. I think we quite often ask our managers to be quite rule bound, and you need some structure. It's not complete anarchy, but I think we need to give people a lot more freedom within a framework to move around and to find solutions and to deal with people as individuals, as what works best for that person as an individual. And I think we need to move away from the one size fits all. And a lot of that then comes back to listening, building relationships, and having that kind of culture of high trust, so people can feel vulnerable enough to say, look, I have a problem with X, or I need this time. And then you can start to kind of co-create what the solutions will be. So a lot of the things actually we ended up doing have been very, very simple things that don't cost a lot of money. One of my favorites has been listening groups that we've run. This is back from kind of 15, 20 years ago, but sitting down, mixed group of people, create a safe environment, nothing is off limits. And from that, we had some really interesting conversations that came out about how certain managers were not giving freedom, how there were challenges about when and where people felt that they could genuinely work. So I think there was a great opportunity to really explode some of the kind of traditional ways of working, encourage people to innovate, to take a risk. Big fan of kind of test and learn, fail fast. Can people work abroad, for instance? Well, yes, you can within these frameworks. And I think we found a way of kind of individualizing solutions and empowering our managers to color outside those lines and to have a bit more confidence that everything doesn't have to be almost no as a first instance. And I think we need to kind of broaden that willingness to kind of really be people-centric and find solutions, because fundamentally retail is about people. You don't have big manufacturing assets. So if you can unlock that, it can add you huge competitive advantage.
Thank you, Paul. I think that, the empowerment that you spoke of is so key, right? That people feel empowered as if they can color outside of those lines. If I reflect on my own experience, I have always found myself in organizations that are very much command and control, very hierarchical, because I guess that's the easiest way out, right? It gets less messy that way, but there obviously are implications then, right, for employee engagement, etc.
And I think the pandemic really changed the rules of the game. I think that the traditional command and control, sit and watch people, it disappeared overnight. And I think people got a window into people's worlds through the working from home. The reality is, the kids do come on the WebEx and walk in at the most inappropriate moment of a conversation. And we were very clear, kind of, if the child or the partner or the pet or whoever comes in, introduce them. Yeah, it's not a big deal. And I think to kind of humanize, as we're talking about, kind of real life is real life. You're working out of your bedroom or, in some people, their couch. It's real life. And I think that broke down some barriers. But the interesting bit now, I think, is as people kind of go back to work, and hopefully we're at the later stages of the pandemic, I worry that some organizations are starting to swing back to that comfort zone of what was there in the past. And I think people will vote with their feet. And I think it's our job as leaders within organizations to challenge some of those behaviors and to show, look, this worked, this unleashed a whole load of creativity and productivity. Why go back? And I think to have that courage to have some of those conversations with the traditional command and control leaders, because they exist in every organization, I think we have to be brave and have those conversations.
And speaking of voting with our feet as people, as employees, right? Brandon, I'd like to bring in your perspective here. So, someone who is Gen Z and only just starting out on your career journey, what do you look for then in a potential employer? What are your expectations, considering that research shows us already that over 50% of people are now looking for more flexibility, the remote working options, better pay, and they're moving away from that command and control hierarchical organization.
Of course. Well, I suppose I might echo a lot of what Devi, Lisa, and Paul have said, and I must say, whilst you were all speaking, it warmed my heart, because you all seem to have a very unique and driving the change in your different spaces that you're moving in. So I mean, I guess I thank you from a Gen Z perspective for providing these spaces and forums for other Gen Zs and other people coming up like me to have opportunities in such diverse and flexible working environments. So for me, I would say, again, it's about, that keyword of flexibility. But what does that mean? I would say we need to have we need to be able to be ourselves. I think diversity is something that we often talk about, but I think for a lot of people it's a very awkward conversation. I think a lot of people in the past have been afraid to be themselves, and I think we're really testing and stretching what is professional. And so I think as we kind of are kind of coming to the end of what has been a very grueling year and a half or so, I think we need to learn that being ourselves is okay, and we need to be in working environments and be in circles where we don't feel uncomfortable to say that we're having mental health problems or we're struggling, or and I think again breaking down the barriers, having approachable management, where you can say, I'm having a down day today, or not feeling myself today, really struggling, being back in the office or whatever. Just again breaking down those barriers, and I really love the kind of model that Lisa has, whereby you're all a team. I think we often in organizations have this thing of hierarchy, and you shouldn't be able to approach seniors and management and directors and stuff like that, but really breaking down that kind of wall between someone who's me, who's you could say is at the bottom of the food chain, and people really up the top, and I should be able to kind of approach those people at any time, is really important. The other thing I wanted to touch on is kind of active listening. I think in a lot of spaces, well, obviously I'm coming from uni a couple of years ago, and we used to have things like suggestion boxes, and you'd make a suggestion about how to make the working environment a lot better, and often they were addressed in a way, it's just like let's find ways. I mean, let's find excuses as to why we can't accommodate this or why we can't do this. But I think we need to move towards a more proactive, mindset where we're looking at, okay, how can we accommodate? How can we facilitate this for that person? And I think COVID has kind of been a catalyst to that in a way, and has opened a lot of people's eyes, that we can have a can-do attitude as such. So I guess flexibility, being open-minded, breaking down the barriers between the employee and management, and just be yourself.
Thank you so much, Brandon. And you touched on a few points there, one of which was very much the flexibility piece, but also people kind of just leaning into their humanity, right? That whole active listening piece. And a part of active listening is very much it needs to be empathy based, right? It needs to be led by compassion. So I guess my next question to all of you, I'll open this up to the entire panel, is what role then do you think emotional intelligence has in our new era workspaces, whatever those may look like?
I'll kick off first because I've probably had the longest to rest, so that helps. I think for me, if we're a people-led business, emotional intelligence is central to that. We need to understand people, and people need to be comfortable to be, as Brendan said, vulnerable, to be authentic. There's absolutely no point coming to work if you feel like crap, quite frankly, and you just sit there watching the clock go. Have a culture that says we all feel crap. I feel crap some days. You know what? And I'm honest about it. If I'm really not with it as a chief exec, what is the point of pretending that I'm all right? I'm not. And we're not perfect as leaders. And that's another thing we need to remember. Leaders, and I joke, leaders are human beings as well. I know sometimes people will say they may not be, but they are. And I think for me, emotional intelligence is absolutely critical. And I say that because it's often missed. It's often missed at interview stage, in terms of recruiting people in. And for me, a culture that has emotional intelligence at the heart of it is a really strong culture. And one of the things we started to do about 3 years ago when I came to the organization, I developed a management and leadership program with a philosophy around strength scope, so all around strengths. And that helped us throughout COVID because the all of the managers understood each other so well that they already knew about the children. They already knew about the care responsibilities. They knew that somebody had got cancer. They knew the individual, most importantly. And some other things that came through on that emotional intelligence is when people are sharing things with you, you can start to anticipate by listening, by active listening, some of the things that are coming. So for example, 3 of our staff are going through menopause. And it's pretty clear through their cycles when they're going through that cycle. Quite honestly, we're a small business, Debbie, and you can't possibly do that in your business, but it's important that you understand that. And even if you don't notice it, they've got the bravery that Paul talked about to say, look, I'm just not with it today. I don't know why I'm not with it, but I'm not. And I think that's why emotional intelligence is absolutely so important for us. And some of the other things in terms of emotional intelligence is around a collective in terms of what we do, but not making everybody do the same thing. So for example, and I mentioned this previously, we did spa days during lockdown. So we sent our staff spa packages and they had spas at home. We came online and we had a glass of fizzy and things. And everybody welcomed that, but it wasn't my idea. This was from the team wellbeing group. It was their idea and it cost us hardly anything, but it was a really valuable thing to do. And then in the return between the lockdowns, some people came to work. We have flexible working as flexible first approach, as Debbie said. Some people returned, some because of their own vulnerabilities didn't. And naturally, because we'd only just got back together, some people wanted to go for drinks. And I said, absolutely, and the company will pay. I think you've done a great job. You've worked absolutely at capacity and worked so hard with government on the regulations for returning back to play and allowing you to go to your gyms and your sports clubs and things. But what we did do is for those that weren't in the office and didn't want to go for a drink because of their vulnerabilities or just don't drink, we sent gifts to those people who were at home as well. So they were part of that celebration and bringing people back into the workplace. So for me, that's just some little examples of where emotional intelligence is really critical for me as a leader. But part of opening up that emotional intelligence as a leader is being vulnerable. And I mentioned this before again. When 4 days before starting the job, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, completely out of the blue. And I had a choice as to whether I talked about that to this new team and board who I'd never met or whether I didn't. And I'm delighted to say I had strength to talk about it. And it was the best decision I ever took because that helped me. The year before lockdown, I was locked down because of chemo and radiotherapy. But that just built a culture even more. And I felt more supported and even more able to be myself because of that intelligence that people had around me as well. So there's a few personal stories as a leader, but hopefully that creates that culture. No matter what happens to any of our team, they could talk about it and we'd respond appropriately to that.
Lisa, that was so empowering. Thanks a lot. And I would just kind of jump in there and just as a contrast, you as a leader, to me as perhaps a little bit further down the chain. But for me, I need to feel comfortable, and like, telling your employees, yeah, be comfortable. We really want you to. We encourage you to use, the wellbeing platforms and speaking to all these people that they have in place, but creating a culture within, for example, I work in an office, creating a culture within the office where it's okay to talk about these things and it's not like a burden. Or for example, a couple of months ago, I was going through a pretty rough patch and I had quite bad anxiety around some family stuff, and my office picked up on it straight away. And the culture that we have in here, it's just like, work can stop for a second. Let's talk about this, and if you're comfortable, let's all share our experiences. And that was something that really helped me beyond speaking to a counselor or speaking to family and friends. And I guess I've done a lot on race and diversity and about ethnic diversity in the workplace as well. And again, it's about having these awkward conversations. It's awkward to talk about mental health. It's awkward to talk about racism, but until we do it, we're never going to get past it. And so I guess I look for when I talk as a Gen Z, employers need to have a culture where it's okay to show your vulnerabilities and it's not deemed as unprofessional or that you can't perform your role or you can't function just as well as the other person. So
thank you so much.
I'll go next. And Brandon, you're a future leader, so you're not at the bottom of the food chain. So
I know.
please stop saying that, because you are so in my lens, you're a future leader, right? And that's really important for you to know that. Um, and I think both stories, and how you shared, Lisa, with where your organization is at. Actually, I was sitting there nodding, right? Because I could see it from the sort of multinational lens, right? And actually, EQ, or emotional intelligence, it's about at our organization. And so Chris O'Shea, our CEO, is very much about, you've got to start by looking after your colleagues. That is the pillar stone of basically our organization. So that is about, educating, that's about engaging, and that's about empathizing, right? That those are the really three areas. And the piece about role modeling, so Lisa, what you did, right, as a leader, was about exactly that, was showing up and showing your vulnerability, which then allows everybody to say, actually, because our chief exec has shared this, it's okay for me to also say that I am going through not a great patch at the moment, or I'm having some issues at home, or my mental health is at stake. And actually, so our C-suite have started doing that as well. In fact, Paul, touching on what you said earlier on, one of the things that Centrica did last year, and off the back end of 2020, was each of our business units hosted listening sessions, right? For the first time. And as an organization, not only was our organization going through a huge restructure, right? And as quite a lot of companies did, right, during the pandemic. So, there were real sort of insightful, key insights that really came out of that. So, and everything in terms of how do we better engage our workforce? How do we, know who our demographic of our organization is? And once we were able to get these insights, we started actually driving some real action that was behind it. So, for example, and Lisa, you talked about, colleagues who were going through menopause. One of the things that we did off the back end of these listening sessions would actually go, right, so we now know what the makeup of our population is across our entire business. We know what the demographic, the age is, right? We know the tenure, etc. The well-being team said, right, we realize we've got an aging population of females here, right? So how do we support them? How do we make sure that actually their day to day, when they come in, even in this channel, or even at work, or even as a female engineer, that we're actually looking after their well-being? Because you know what? Guess what? They're going through menopause, right? So how do we support that group, that particular group? So one of the things that we did was we launched out basically a toolkit to support that particular population with our managers, really to get them to understand what does it mean and how can they support them. And actually, for those who are partners on the other side, right? It's educating you, so you know that actually if this is happening to you at home, you can also take this away, and because it's going to support you on your day to day as well. So that was a great thing that we did. Then on another hand, we had a group of our colleagues. Again, this is all part of the listening. So we talk about emotional intelligence, right? We had a group of our population when we talk about, what, you want to bring your whole self to work, okay? It's I love what that means, but I'll be really honest, I don't think everybody does, right? I think that we need to get better at doing that. We definitely, and we need to be, one of the areas we're trying to drive in Centrica now is actually be more fearless, right? So so Chris is really using that. We want to be a fearless organization, right? So as leaders, how can you be more fearless about just being you? So show up for who you are, right? And if something's not right, call it out, right? And so what we did was we also realized there's a group of our population, when we say bring your whole selves to work, we also want to make sure that if we've got colleagues who are coming on board, we don't just want you to bring your career and everything else, but we want to support what's going on in your family life. So if you're trying to also grow a family, right, how can we as an organization support you? So last year was actually quite pioneering for us, because it's the first time in my professional space that, I've been in an organization that we've really driven this. We now offer fertility, care, right, for colleagues who are trying to actually build families or grow families, right? We're very much at the early stages, but it's something that I'm immensely proud of, right? Because I think it's a milestone that you're telling your colleagues that, look, we actually value you as a whole person, right? So that not only is about your development of you being here from a work perspective, but we also know that what really matters to you outside of work is this: So how can we help you in that area? So these are just some examples I just wanted to share, that actually Centrica did last year that was quite, for me, I'd definitely say quite forward, but it's about the progress, right? It's about keep pushing and keep moving that dial. And I think championing it from role modeling, right, Lisa, as you said you did, I think that is where it comes out, particularly when you talk about mental health, right? When you talk about well-being and that agenda coming in. You know, for the first time, I heard our CEO openly on LinkedIn go on and talk about menopause. Literally, right? He did a sort of what was it, a 60-second, talk, and he just shared why it was important to him. I've got to say, I don't know many CEOs who do that, right, in a FTSE company. But I've got to say, that is what a human-centered approach is for me, right? That is what a people-centered approach is for me. And it's those nuggets that really make a difference when people think it's, you know what, I'm just a person, and I know that there are things going on in my population, in all my colleagues, and I'm happy to share it, and I'm happy to tell them what it means to me. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody, because I've got goosebumps here on my arms just listening to these nuggets, and it really is, comes down to that role modeling. Let's embrace this idea of the imperfect leader, right? If people can see their leaders are imperfect and, as you say, are human beings, right? It permits people the safety, right, to come to work and bring their whole selves, because you're absolutely right. We've touched on this. It's one thing just to say, oh yeah, we want you to bring your whole selves, bring your authentic selves, bring your lived experience. And it's quite another when you realize, well, people don't feel safe enough to do that. So what are you going to do to tackle that problem, right? That's where you've got to start. So thank you so much. Paul, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's just brilliant points from the panel. I think the couple of things that stick in my head. I think the first thing is we have to get recruitment better, particularly of management leadership roles. Far too often we recruit on technical competence rather than on leadership capability and behavior. And I definitely think that we can develop EQ in people. I think that there's this slightly lazy narrative that you're born with it and you're either IQ or EQ. I don't really subscribe to that either. I think it's something that we can develop and we can coach and we can grow. But for me, I think the thing that's really, really important is that we recognize when people are being vulnerable, when people are being fearless, when people are being empathetic. Because if someone hits their sales targets, everyone's the first to say, congratulations, you've hit your sales target. But if someone's being really vulnerable, and we had a great example earlier this week where a fantastic manager in our business actually said in the middle of a meeting with our president of Europe, I'm not sure I can do this. And he knew she couldn't do it, but she had the courage in front of 20 other people to turn around and say, I'm not ready to do this and I need some help. And he was brilliant with her in terms of, supporting her, acknowledging the vulnerability, coming up with solutions, building the confidence. And I think as businesses, we need to create that psychological safety, but create those moments of reinforcement where people feel that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to express some authenticity, because if you don't celebrate those moments, people are not going to do it a second time. And I think it's just rewiring some of that culture. So I definitely think acknowledge the moments, and there's some kind of, I suppose, more traditional HR bits behind of, really recruit the best people and really develop this, because you wouldn't think of not developing accountancy skills in an accountant. Why would you not develop emotional intelligence in a manager? I mean, I think again, I think it's something that we don't spend enough time, money, effort on. And really, it's important at all levels in organizations. If you can train, people like Brandon, if you can train your future leaders in some of this stuff, just get them kind of starting to think about some of these concepts, and have some kind of coaches and mentors to talk this through. It creates a stronger economy, stronger organizations for the long term.
Thank you, Paul. And would you say that people or businesses, leaders struggle with this whole question of emotional intelligence because they see it as a weakness? They don't see it as a strength, and because it's the fluffy HR stuff.
I'm not sure it's that. I think it's just not always understood. And I think there are some brilliant leaders, and we've probably been fortunate as a panel to work with some of those who really understand this. And then there's some leaders that find it hugely threatening and hugely uncomfortable. And I think this is where, at the most highest level, boards need to look for leaders who can work in this way and who can energize organizations and unleash this potential. But throughout organizations, it's something that I think we should critically evaluate in how we reward people, in how we promote people, in how we hire people. And I think I don't believe that it's just not there in people. I think we can ignite it in different ways, but there needs to be a level of self-awareness, and there needs to be almost a level of appetite from the individual to go down that path. And I think we have to have those kind of coaching conversations with people to kind of make sure that they're fully self-aware, and then help them, support them on that journey if they want to go on the journey. If they're struggling with going on the journey, then sometimes you have to cut your losses and realize that there's a limit where you can go. But if people have that kind of willingness and bravery to go along the journey, how do you support them? And there's lots of animations that you can do.
Thank you, Paul.
Well, I think I was just going to add from a recruitment perspective. I perhaps didn't introduce myself properly, but I'm a recruitment consultant specializing in recruiting, roles in finance. And again, touching on what Dylan said, a lot of, I think we all have biases, and we all just need to be aware of them a little bit more, because, me as a recruiter, I can speak to someone, and if they opened up about a vulnerability on our first phone call, how would that make me think? But I just have to be aware. If someone said to me, well, listen, I can't do 5 days in the office because I've got children at home, is that going to make me think that person's any less able? Like, you have to just be a little bit more aware. And again, just being honest with yourself and having those honest conversations. And so I guess, I also like to kind of touch on the whole thing about input and output. You as an employer, the more you input into your workforce, and to your future leaders like myself, the more you get out, the better they'll work, and your outcomes are just going to be significantly better. And we look at things in my business. We look at things like referrals. You get people network, people talk, and if you start that change locally, it will spread. And so I just kind of urge everyone to do that, really.
Can I just, Brandon, actually, just whilst you're sort of talking, I'm sitting here going, yeah, this is great. And actually, when you sort of shared right at the beginning about, being quite conscious about it, right, and understanding, I think there's that piece about, actually, you're moving into this whole conscious inclusion piece, right? You are, and actually, but I would also say, that it's a tough and actually quite a complex journey, right? When you talk about truths for people that still don't face or don't want to face, because you know what? Let's be really honest. We are actually really uncomfortable with the truth, that we're actually uncomfortable with difference, right?
Yeah,
there is a piece on that for me. But actually, in society and in business, we do need to own that truth, because actually that's part of being human, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's so going back to Paul, what you touched on, and Brandon, what you touched on, I think for me, it's it is about the wantingness of wanting to have, and educating future leaders and leaders to have that emotional intelligence. And you're absolutely right, Paul, because getting it right from a recruitment point of view is key, right? So you're bringing that talent coming in through the door, is it seen as fluffy, right, Brandon? And you're going, well, you do have individuals who've got their bias lenses going on, but are we conscious that we know that? Or do we check in on that? But we're only going to know that if we're aware of it in the first place, right?
Exactly.
At whatever stage you are within your journey.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. And I think that, this leads me on to my next question then, right? What do we do about those individuals then who are part of our organizations, our teams, that don't show a willingness, unprepared to grow that self-awareness, unprepared to grow as future leaders because they are uncomfortable with the truth, whatever that looks like. So what is the panel's thoughts on that? What do we do about that then?
If I could, I'll kick this off. Again, I probably didn't introduce myself properly, but I have also done nearly 4 years as a special constable in the Metropolitan Police, and as you can imagine, I've unfortunately faced a lot of stuff, surrounding people not being aware, and sometimes people not wanting to be aware, and so again, as a as a very determined Gen Z, as we often are, I'm very strong in terms of personality, and I'll always have those awkward conversations. And I think it's, again, not, it's very easy to get upset about things, and it's really easy to say, you're ignorant, you're not willing to kind of have an open perspective on certain things. But I think education is power. My mom's always told me that educating is far better than punishment. And so I would urge, again, have those uncomfortable conversations. I know I've said it a lot, but I've done a lot in the police around race, and a lot of people have just said, it's just an awkward conversation to have. I don't know what I can say, what I can't say, and it comes, very, very similarly in terms of being human and humanizing things. People are afraid to admit vulnerability such as mental health or family commitments or things like that, and so I would urge to have honest conversations and having a forum that is not an informal forum, but employers need to have something in place if they haven't already. The police don't, surprisingly, where people can come and admit those vulnerabilities, or even have a blog or something accessible for everyone, where they can have those awkward conversations. Someone can lead it, be raw and authentic, which is the most important thing. Yeah.
Thank you, Brandon. Everything you just said, couldn't have phrased it any better. Again, goose pimples. Thank you. Did anybody want to add to what Brandon's just said?
Yeah, I think I just want to link into Brandon and Devi's point about fear of the unknown. You know what? People think because I'm a lesbian that I've got to be really careful what they say. I haven't got a clue about gay politics. I just happen to be married to a woman and we've got kids. But there's been a real fear about what they can say. And I've been just really open by using words that are sometimes inappropriate in a manner that's joking, so it's safe. And then I'm very clear it's not joking. This is the reason why. So sometimes embracing that fear and demonstrating I'm scared at times in the world that I live in as a lesbian woman in the LGBTQI community, I'm absolutely petrified at times. So don't feel that it's just you just because you're straight or you're a gay man or whatever. We're all feeling it all the time, and that's okay. But to come to the question, Dylan, about, in my career, I've been CEO of a number of different organizations. Some people just don't fit, and the culture, it doesn't come from the top. There are more people at the bottom. Therefore, the culture should come from the bottom and embrace the bottom. Keep that in mind. And the bottom is not a bad place. Actually, the bottom is a great place because we need people at the bottom. More people should be at the bottom. And being at the top is not always a great place. So I think forget the tops and bottoms. We're just people. We're just a team in an organization. So, Brendan, if you say it again, I'm going to slap you. And we're allowed to do physical abuse and these sorts of things. So for me, it's around that sometimes people just don't fit in. And I've had to have honest conversations with people. You would invest time. I would always invest time in individuals. I often find it's around a lack of confidence, which is being portrayed as confidence, as arrogance, as fear. So when you get really underneath it and you ask are you okay? No, are you okay? Are you okay? And you don't let it say, yeah, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. How many times do you interview somebody and say, you okay? Your journey okay? And they go, yeah, fine, thanks. Well, no. If they said I had a crap journey, my car broke down, I'm having a nervous breakdown because I couldn't get here, I lost the postcode, my sat nav didn't work. Actually, they're being honest with you. And clearly you'd talk to them about timekeeping and mechanical issues. But that honesty for me is far more important than somebody actually being on time. And I'm just giving a little float here about how I would recruit. If somebody said to me, look, I have got kids and I've got some mental health issues, again, the first thing I'd think is, God, they're incredibly honest. That's great. Because I want people who are honest with me, so that when the shit hits the fan, quite frankly, and they do make Paul's mistakes, they'll tell me. They won't say, oh, I put that screw in that rocket in the wrong place and the door might open and the astronaut might fly out. I'd rather they tell me that than me find out, quite frankly. But I just wanted to say, in terms of style, some people don't fit. And sometimes people will know that themselves and they will exit the organization. And what I found is during the process of probably a year and a half into role, as a culture changes with an organization, people take themselves out of it if they cannot change their own system of beliefs and ways of working. They pull themselves out. And I don't think that's a bad thing. You know, some people are in that environment and that's the way they are. And I wouldn't judge them for that, but it's not right for our environment.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I am aware we have 10 minutes left, and so I just wanted to speak to some of the comments that we've had, and we also have a question. So a comment from Tracy Young says, thank you so much, Lisa. My anxiety has meant I've really struggled to return to the office, and I've felt very othered as a result. The attitude of my organization was, but we've put in physical measures such as plastic screens. What else do you expect? Thank you again, Lisa. It means so much to know there are supportive leaders out there. And then the question to the panel is from Alice Roworth, and forgive me if I mispronounced your surname, Alice. But Alice says, good morning all, a great discussion. We have a great flexible working system and it is all trust-based. But I've found that for some people, this has backfired and that they feel very guilty if they need to do childcare, for example, even if their managers are perfectly fine with it and openly say so. I wondered if any of you had any options on how to handle this kind of situation and to better support these individuals. I don't want to put anybody on the spot.
Dylan, I just if I'm understanding that question correctly, the question is basically they have a flexible first approach within their organization, but there are some colleagues who feel quite guilty about taking it. Is that the question, right? And how and although it's been highlighted by management that it's okay, right? What are the sort of, I guess, milestones that those individuals could take to sort of, you know, build about their own to make it feel that it's okay, it's acceptable to right? That's a really, who's the question from? Sorry, the name?
It's from Alice.
Hi, Alice. I guess just from my lens, from our organization point of view, that there's a big piece about role modeling here. And what I mean by role modeling is actually, you know, as an organization, our leaders, you know, they won't at certain school pickup times, they're just not there, right? They're out of office. But so it's a bit about, it's culture. So the topic that we've been talking about, culture, this is what it is, right? If your organization and your colleagues, it's acceptable, it becomes the norm, it's ingrained, it's like a sense, right? Check. You don't need to always have the comms, but a comms piece always does help. So, you know, we had a very large sort of comms piece that went out to our organization, but, you know, subsequently to that, so even now with lockdown being lifted effectively, right, and you can go back to the office, whilst we've informed all our colleagues, you have the option of going back into the office, but it's absolutely up to you. And I think it's about trust. It's about creating that psychological safety with your colleagues, right? Your line manager saying, look, if you don't want to go in, it is absolutely fine. But it is really then down to you as the individual, right? To take a bit of ownership here. I think that's really important as well. There's so much that the business can give you, and the business is supporting you. But as an individual, you also need to then go, okay, that this can work for me. I'm going to switch my laptop off and I'm going to go and collect my children because I've got to go and do the school run. And you know what? The world's not going to collapse, right? Your work is going to still be there when you come back, in an hour's time. And I think this is what being real and being human is about, because your organization does trust you. So I would say take that leap of faith, right? But it is about culture. There is about psychological safety, within this piece, and what that means to your organization. So I hope that helps.
Can I just add, Debbie, because it made me giggles. I have got kids, and I rarely get to pick them up, and it really annoys me because I miss all the gossip at the school gate, and then the one day I go and I get the gossip at the school gate, and I think I do not want to go to school gate again. So when I get called to when it's conference not necessarily hybrid, it's kind of like, I'm delighted you put it on, 2 till 5, so I can't pick up my kids again. And it's just a note to say, have you thought about when you're putting things on? Obviously, as a leader, you can often say that, so just be conscious of it. But the other thing we introduced was on our emails, we put, this email is sent at a time that's appropriate to me, because often I'd work 9, 10 o'clock at night. And what I was very clear was that didn't mean that my team had to reply at 11 and 12 o'clock at night. So there's an email signature now that's very clear. It's sent to me because I have to, for my own mental health and well-being, empty my inbox. Otherwise I can't sleep. That's me. That's my nuance. Staff know that's just the way that I am, and the team know that. But I would say, just like Debbie, just be confident. It's not about how many hours you work or when you work. It's what you achieve. And be so bloody brilliant at what you're doing. You will be. I know you will be. The fact that you're worrying about somebody saying you're not in at 3:15 because you're picking up the kids tells me you're so conscientious. You'll be a brilliant employee, Alice. So have confidence in it and just crack on. Spend the time with the kids because they grow up before you ever believe it.
And also, I think it's just touching again what Debbie said about culture. If you're in an organization and you're working with a group of people that have that understanding and the same awareness as you and are feeding into the same culture as you, don't feel bad. We're all human. They'll have times where they'll need a bly, or they'll need an afternoon off or an hour away from their desk. And so I would just, again, well done for being so kind of courageous and touching. I think it was Tracy Young that said about going back into the office. On the topic of having awkward conversations, this is my second day back in the office because I've been riddled with anxiety about going back in. And yesterday was the first day, and I worked from home in the morning, and I came in the afternoon, and just the greeting that I got from my office and my colleagues was sensational. And now I will be back in. So again, take that step, have the uncomfortable conversations, and to Alice, don't feel awkward or bad, because again, everyone will have some point, because we're human. Everyone will have some point in their working and personal lives that they need some flexibility and some understanding from everyone. And you'll be there to return the favor, just like they're doing for you.
Paul, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think great advice. I mean, for me, I what we really try to do is move to this world of it's all about outputs. It's not about when and where that you're working. It's about the outputs. And I think if there are some, if there are meetings taking place or activities taking place when it's the time of the school run that stops you from being able to perform, I think that's a really sensible conversation to have with your employer about how can we kind of shift some of these so I can make sure that I fulfill all my commitments. And the fact that your employer already has this kind of flexible approach probably leads me to hope that they would be pretty cool with that. So I think one of the interesting challenges is almost the inherent guilt we have as humans about taking time off or out or being flexible. And I think we just have to reprogram ourselves in terms of, look, we're doing a fantastic job. We're good colleagues, we're good team members, we're good employees. And if I work at 6 to 8 at night rather than at 3 to 5 in the afternoon, and that helps me to deliver what needs to be done, then that's okay. I love Lisa's story about the email. I think we do something very similar, and I think we've just got to find that what works for each individual, and when do you have to be collective, because there is some collective time. But yeah, I would definitely have the conversation, but don't feel too guilty. I mean, if you're delivering and doing an amazing job and you just need that time, I think it's a dilemma we all face. Yeah. We're all wanting to be great parents, great leaders, great partners, great human beings. And it's a juggle and it's complicated, but I think we have to realize that it doesn't mean we drop everything just to be a great employee. That's not the way to having a fulfilling and meaningful life.
Thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time out of your busy schedules to spend this hour with myself, your co-panelists and equality leaders. It really was a joy to hear you speak, and thank you again for bringing your voices and perspectives. We are going to have all of our recordings on our YouTube channel, so please, by all means, if you want to check in back with us, make some notes, as I would love to, because I wasn't able to take notes today, then please do visit us on our YouTube channels. We'll be uploading the summit panel discussions in a matter of days. Thank you so much, Devi, Lisa, Paul, and Brandon. It was an absolute pleasure. Take care of yourselves, and we'll chat soon.
Take care.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.